You, do you want to sit down here? As people come in, can you go toward the center? There are a lot of people coming in, and they will want to use the end seat. So please move toward the center. Thank you. So as people are coming in, I want to get started because I want to respect people's time. My name is David Brown. I'm the Associate Dean and Associate Vice President for Health Equity and Inclusion. When I see an audience like this filling the entire auditorium, to me it means that this is something that's really important to you and that this is something that has impacted you as it has me and a lot of others here at Michigan Medicine. Today, one of the purposes of today is to come together as a community to support each other. As you all know, there was a significant act of hate, likely an act of ethnic intimidation that happened a week ago. This goes against our values of humanity, civility, and respect. Our unified community is stronger than hate, and we will not tolerate that. And I'm happy that you are here as fighters against hate with me. I don't want to pat anyone on the back, but I want to acknowledge the expedience in which this was responded to. This was not sat upon. The leaders acted on this very quickly. And I know there's questions about transparency and what's going on, so we want to answer a lot of those questions today. Many of you have received this card here. It has resources on the back, but has a great quote on the front as well from Archbishop Desmond Tutu. "My humanity is bound up in yours, for we can only be human together." So we are here together to celebrate our humanity and to fight against hate. We all kind of do this in different ways and heal in different ways. And sometimes we do that with a spiritual leader. And so in the spirit of inclusion, I am going to have other people talk, and I'll kind of MC and moderate today. And so with that being said, I would like to have a few words from our Michigan Medicine Imam, Imam Kamal Ayubi. Thank you.
Can everyone hear okay? Let's see. I greet you with greetings of peace, blessings, respect. I was asked to help, as some of you may know, I do a meditation or several meditation groups within the hospital, one Wednesday from 12 to 12:30. It's a safe space to engage in the healing practice of meditation and contemplation. And so what I wrote is kind of a meditative reflection. So I just ask you to just be, present in your being with a sense of openness, compassion as I read and reflect with you. What I have found with meditation reflection is that it grounds us in what connects us as human beings. We give what we have. When we have fear, hatred, self-aggrandizement, self-hate, insecurity within us, we give this to others in some shape, form, or message. When we have an internal sense of the power of compassion, healing, forgiveness, connection, appreciation, wisdom, love, faith, within, it becomes available for others, and we can share it. A key here is that there is power in our breaths. The quality of our inhalation and exhalation. We can do that together. Our inspiration, expiration. that has effect beneath our words, behaviors, and the symbols we create about ourselves and others. A noose is a piece of rope. Rope only becomes dangerous after the intention to terrorize and intimidate comes to shape in such a way. In some sense, we each carry a thread of this rope called life. With it, we have choices and freedoms to strangle ourselves and others, or to shape that rope into a binding, helping force for our humanity. The question remains, in times of perceived crisis or even ease, will we hold together in the power of compassion and goodwill? Finally, I would say that reflection or meditation also gives us the opportunity to unpack the wisdom in our emotions. What is our anger really about? Have we ever had the opportunity to articulate our deeply set fears to ourselves or to a trusted human being? Have we mingled with the wisdom of our consciousness to heal from what strangles us internally, socially, and beyond, to find a way to freedom? Many signs show that our differences can be of mutual benefit and honor to all of us. Yet there are forces that feed the instinct to disperse against our common humanity. Today and each day, we have the opportunity to reflect and contemplate on what world we want to create within and around us. In our heart of hearts, what will we experience, and how will this translate to those we live, work, and serve besides? We breathe and embrace the wisdom, paradoxes, and wonders of life. Peace to you.
Thank you for those words, something that we needed at this time. Next, I'd like to introduce a lot of the leaders who were part of the response, but also part of the support system for all of us here at Michigan Medicine. And as I mentioned, can you stand briefly and so that people can know who you are? Sean Dwyer, the Executive Director of University Hospital in Franklin, CVC. Brian Urich, Director of Security. Dee Hunt, the Chief Human Resource Officer. Jeff Rumpkin, the Interim Director of the Office for Institutional Equity. Tanisha White, the Associate Director of the Office for Institutional Equity. Katrina Wade Golden from the Office for Diversity and Inclusion, and soon Rob Sellers will hopefully join us. Kathleen, who is the Chief Diversity Officer of University of Michigan. Kathleen Robertson, who heads the Office for Workforce Resilience. Christina Wright, the head of Spiritual Care. Phyllis Blackman, the Administrative Director for the Office for Health Equity and Inclusion. Clarissa Love, one of our facilitators and consultants in the Office for Health Equity and Inclusion. Fermi Okanlami, the medical student, head for the Office for Health Equity and Inclusion. Rose Glenn, the head of communications. David Miller, who is I don't know what you're the head of, but you're probably the head of something. Excuse me? Chief Clinical Officer. Sorry, David. I had a brain lapse. We're all leaders, just so that you know. Everyone here is a leader. Tony Denton, the Senior Vice President and Chief Operating Officer, and Jeff Desmond, the Chief Medical Officer. So thank you all for responding quickly, but also being a resource for people moving forward. When I started with the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Strategic Plan, now we're going into our fourth year, I was very optimistic that we would have an impact, but I was also smart enough to realize that the impact would have negative and positive consequences for people and at different times and with different situations. I knew that there would be stumbling blocks along the way and challenges to our values and principles, but I am happy that we do have some values and principles that we need to uphold in order to fight this. I wasn't able to predict this specific event, but I knew that something would happen because this is the society that we live in. I think in times like this, we need to think about what our true north is. And that's, for me, that's the vision statement from the Office for Health, Equity, and Inclusion, is that we want to create a place here at Michigan Medicine where everyone feels valued and can thrive. That means every patient, every staff member, every faculty member, everyone who walks through the doors of Michigan Medicine. And when that is violated, I am hurt, and I hope that all of you are as well. One of our mission statements is to foster an environment of respect that honors the well-being, individuality, and dignity of all who work, learn, and heal here. As we're all working really hard, I know that we are all under stress at times to get work done, and we want to do an amazing job. We also need to remember that we need to heal ourselves. It's not just for our patients, but it's for us as individuals and for our community. This event was traumatic to many of us, and when traumas happen, they can deeply impact us individually and as a community. And responding to traumas, we need to take time to pause, listen, and find a way to take care of ourselves and our community. We know that there are feelings, because we've heard, many of us in many venues, that there's pain, that there's fear, that there's safety concerns, there's anxiety, there's anger, and there's some people who don't have any of those feelings. And what we want to also acknowledge is that some people are having these feelings in isolation, and they may not be sharing them with you. There's so many emotions going on now, from a lack of emotion to extreme emotion, and we want you at this time to not judge others based on their emotions or lack of emotion or extreme emotion, because we all respond and heal in different ways. We know that in times of trauma and stress that people have a natural physiologic response to respond with a fight, flight, and freeze reaction, and this is very natural. However, we also need to figure out the fourth F is to move forward, and part of that moving forward is informing people of this trauma or stress, and include supporting your community and helping yourself. As was alluded to earlier, people seek out different communities to support themselves, and those communities may be religious-based, they may be your family, they could be related to your identity, your race, your gender, how you identify. It may be your immediate work community. And another thing that we ask is that you allow people to congregate in the communities that they need for the support. Sometimes these acts are paralyzing, and we need to figure out a way to make the next step forward. We have heard from many of you that your voices might not have been heard in the past, where maybe smaller incidents have happened. We do need to do a better job of listening to you and being held accountable and having corrective actions for that. I want to let you know that speaking up is important, and there's a non-retaliation for speaking up. If you don't get the response that you need from your local leaders, there's many options. Some of them are included in the back of this card. You can call OHEI, Human Resources, the Office for Institutional Equity, and the Office for Diversity and Inclusion. In the past few months, I have heard some of your concerns through one or multiple of those multiple of those channels, and we have investigated them and taken corrective steps. So this is something that we take very seriously. We know that there's a lot of concerns about what actually happened and what do we know and how transparent we can be. So next I'm going to ask Sean Dwyer and Brian Urich to come up and let us know what do we know and what we can share. Thank you. Okay, you start with Brian. Would you like?
I like the one you have.
Oh, you don't want the red one?
Well, red one will work good. I don't care. Thanks.
Everybody hear me okay? Good afternoon, or good morning, I guess it is. I'm Brian Urich. I'm the Director of Security for the Health System. I'm also a police officer for the University of Michigan. And I'm going to talk real briefly about what we're doing to, A, keep you safe. More importantly, what we're doing to make sure that you feel safe, because they're two different things. So let's talk a little bit about the investigation. Well, the bad news is, folks, that I can't really share anything about the investigation. And that is simply because it is a criminal investigation. It is, or could be, a felony. In other words, if I'm a person who attempts to harass or intimidate you in any way, shape, or form based on race or gender or anything like that, that is a felony in the state of Michigan. So that is what we are doing to investigate. That is the crime that we're investigating, and we have every single detective, all of our investigative team at Michigan Medicine, every person at DPSS is physically looking into this from every single angle, meaning cameras, access control, computers, doing search warrants. There are all sorts of things that, unfortunately, I can't give you that level of detail, but that is the investigation part. I've been asked, is Michigan Medicine safe? It's an extremely safe place. It really is. Unfortunately, and a lot of people have heard me say this before, security is about reducing both risk and reducing anxiety. And our job in security is to support you. And we do that by focusing on the risk, which is that access control, the investigations, but it's also about the anxiety. So what we're trying to do is make sure that we are out there, that we are engaging with your staff when we're not on a call, that we're doing foot patrol, that we're walking in your areas and engaging your staff. Because ultimately, a crime like this is solved simply by building your trust and you having the confidence to come forward and say, you know what? I don't like what's going on. I got to give you some information. Remember, we're a community here, and the information that you can give us will help us solve this crime and many others. That's the way it's done all over the United States. People like you are the ones who actually solve crimes. So that's what we're doing to actually address keeping you safe and making sure that we make you feel safe. Because if you're not supported, if you have issues that either happen here or happen outside of work that we need to help you with, that's what we're here for. And if we don't do a good job of that, we can't deliver unbelievable Michigan medicine, can we? Is that good?
Yep.
Okay. And then we'll stay after. I've got multiple people from DPSS here. We will stay after. We will answer questions. And more importantly, we will come to your workstations. We'll come to your night shift huddles, and we will meet with you at your time with your staff to discuss any of these situations. Okay? Thanks.
Good afternoon, everybody. Sorry to see you again this way. It was really a tough time when we got that phone call. And I want to thank the team that came together that you all saw stand up. I think these things come to you and you say, what is the best thing to do for our staff, our faculty, and our learners? And do we talk about it? Do we make it known in the environment? How do we balance the fear and the past traumas that people clearly have in their lives? This is going to bring all of that to the surface. And so I'm sure that we have not gotten everything right. I know, having run many crisis things, we always debrief them and we never quite get it right. So we would like your feedback. But I'll tell you, people have approached this with the best intention possible, with what they think you need to know, and to try and facilitate a conversation where everybody can feel like they're heard. And I want to just say to you that I want to thank in particular the individuals who experienced this horrific act, that they had the courage to tell us about it, and that they supported our goal of sharing it. It's really hard. I need you to know those people are really hurting. The individuals are really struggling. I'm sorry, my current state is I am vacillating between really being angry and really being sad. And at the moment it's sad, so just bear with me here. And then the team that surrounds those individuals, they're really, really, really hurting too. And then as a community, everybody's reliving their trauma. So the one thing I want to ask you, and that we asked leaders yesterday to do, is to not only talk about where you're at, be kind to each other. Don't judge the responses that people are having, but to also commit to listen to what you're hearing, to respond in a way that is kind. And I would say we are hearing messages, and I'll echo what David said about that the leadership hasn't always listened. I would just ask you to please speak to us and give us a chance to hear you. Now is the time if we're going to actually make constructive, considerable change, that we need to come together. And I understand, I believe 100% that trust is an iterative process, and it's built one baby step at a time. So I would just ask you all with your peers to take that baby step again, to trust that maybe the reaction will be different, and that if the reaction isn't what you expect, to please escalate up in the organization. We've tried to put together the most supportive resources we can for you. David outlined those, and our folks have been available, and I will tell you they've been being used en masse. And I want to just reiterate that I think it's really brave when you reach out for help when you're struggling, because it's really painful if you're struggling alone. And we really don't want anybody to struggle alone. So find your best friend, find somebody, use the formal resources if you are struggling. I know we're going to recover from this. I've been here 30 years. I know we're a resilient group, but I know we only do that when we band together with a common purpose. And I think for us, that's really around our values. So I would just ask that you join in with everybody around Michigan Medicine and join in that effort. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Sean. We did have a question presented to us beforehand from a learner, and that question is, could we provide transparency about what the hospital and school steps are when confronted with a hate crime, and what does an individual do when they experience a hate crime here? So to address that, I'd like to have Tanisha White, the Associate Director of the Office for Institutional Equity, come up and help us answer that question.
Can everyone hear me okay? Okay, good afternoon. Again, I'm Tanisha White. I'm an Associate Director in the Office for Institutional Equity. I'm not sure how familiar you all are with our office, but we are the office on campus that looks into concerns of discrimination and harassment, or discriminatory harassment. And so as stated previously, oftentimes when we get concerns that come to our office, we can't be extremely transparent. There's some things that we aren't able to share with everyone while we're going through an investigative process. However, we always encourage individuals, if you've experienced something, if you've witnessed something, you've been subjected to something, that you should always report it. There are several avenues to report incidents of hate or bias. You can contact our office directly. I actually have some cards with me if you're all interested. It talks a little bit about our office. It has our office contact information, the types of concerns that we would look into. We also encourage you to report it to our campus Climate Support Team, which was formerly the Bias Response Team. Is everyone familiar with the Bias Response Team, or BRT? Have you heard of it before? Okay, so the BRT, or the Campus Climate Support Team, is a team on campus that looks into concerns of bias. You can report it by calling the telephone number. That telephone number is 734-615-BIAS. That's 615-2427. Or you can go to the expectrespect.umich.edu website. There's a link that you can click to report an incident. And once that incident is reported, it will get funneled to the appropriate office. There is someone from OHEI who sits on that team, so we often look into those concerns. We'll follow up with the impacted party, try to gather additional information. We work very closely with HR, academic human resources, DPSS, to try to get more information so that we can look into the concerns. So if you ever have questions, you can always contact OHEI directly, and we can assist you with how to report or how to move forward, connect you with the appropriate resources and support that you might need. Again, I have cards, so if anyone is interested, I will have these available for you with all of our information on it. Thank you.
One of the ways that we heal is by sharing how this impacted us and how this brings back memories and negative experiences. However, we do know that makes us vulnerable, but at times we need vulnerability to move forward. So with that in mind, I've asked Clarissa Love, who is one of our experienced facilitators and speakers and communicators, to share her experiences. And then after that, we'll ask Kathleen Robertson to come down to open the floor to all of you for questions and for sharing. So I want to give a round of applause for Clarissa for sharing.
Before I share, I do want to echo some of the things that were brought forward. We were here over the weekend, and we did get to meet with some of the impacted teams, and they are deeply struggling. So when I first was asked to share what I was thinking, I was like, I haven't thought about what I was thinking. I've been thinking about what others are feeling. And so I had to take a walk and really try to pin some of my thoughts down of where I was at and what I was thinking. So this is a raw go at it, so I would appreciate grace. I walked outside of our health system at about midnight on Saturday, and I was sitting outside, and I looked back at the CVC in the main hospital, and I was really thinking about who is our community? How could this happen in our community? So my first feelings were really emptiness and really deep, deep sadness. I wasn't really shocked because, unfortunately, I've heard many of your stories about what happens sometimes on teams in our institution. Every day we come to work and we do superhero work. There is a group behind the scenes that is unpacking thousands of supplies. Another group sterilizing supplies and human-sized dishwashers. You wouldn't even believe it. Teams transporting patients where they need to go for their appointments. We put kids on ECMO, and we do heart transplants in this institution. Incredible work. We are also researching ways to use proteomics to understand disease processes. And I also know that we pitch in during difficult times like this one to ultimately heal our patients or have an ultimate goal of impacting patient care. But I also realize that sometimes people in our organization aren't fully visible. And this even includes me. And that was a pain pill to swallow. So I have a wicked question, and this is something for you to ponder. Can our community be deeply committed to diagnosing and finding cures for the rarest of diseases and unable to diagnose or understand when people are being excluded? We need to see each other and the many layers that we all bring. The poor, the Black, our Latinx community, Arab, white, Jewish, Christian, atheist, Muslim, those who have disabilities and those without. We not only heal by hearing and working alongside each other, we heal by working and learning about each other. Frequently, I hear people ask questions about why do we have diversity training, and should it really be mandatory? And what I'm here to tell you is yes. In order for us to take the time to reflect, if we want to be the best at research and patient care and educating, we must pause to understand how our actions and words can impact those around us. Give me a second. Oftentimes I'll hear sometimes people say, I don't see color. And I know what they mean. Their intention is that they see the humanity in all of us. But that means sometimes for a lot of us that you don't see us. And that there is something we want you to see. We want you to celebrate the diversity that we bring and the way in which we look at the world and how that can help you and assist you in how you treat patients and do research. The day this happened was really tough because it occurred alongside Juneteenth. And for those of you that don't know, Juneteenth is a historical celebration in the African American community. It's one of great and deep joy. Actually, I went to college at a place called Hampton University, which is located on the Chesapeake Bay. If you haven't seen it before, you should look it up. It's the most beautiful campus in the world. But on our campus sits an oak tree. That oak tree is called Emancipation Oak. And it's actually the tree in which slaves were first told in the South that they were free, which happened in 1863. But it wasn't until a couple of years later, on June 19th, the slaves were actually across the United States told that they were free. And that is what Juneteenth is. It's a day of celebrating freedom and newfound meaning. So you ask, how do I feel about this whole situation? I feel a little bit numb, if I'm honest. Honestly, I do have a bit of sadness, a bit of outrage at times. As Sean mentioned, I vacillate between different moments. And sometimes just utter disgust. But I am numb because I wonder if this will wake up our community. I really want this to be a point in which we, as Dr. Brown mentioned, move forward in a different direction. Well, you now see why we need dialogue and policies to intentionally address equity. But the bigger question is, will you see me? And the pain that it causes when you talk over me. Or you leave me out of opportunities. Or think my hair is too curly. Will you see my brilliant mind and compassionate heart? Because I really need you to see me.
Thank you so much, Clarissa. I know that was hard to share. We needed to hear it. And as she said, we need to see you and see others. Michael, do you have a question? No. Oh, okay. So I would like to invite Michael down to facilitate a discussion and dialogue here with all of you. Thank you, Michael. Do you want this?
I think I'm going to try without. Let's see. Well, let me see. Maybe I can. Stay. We stay.
There.
Thank you, sir.
Prego.
Thanks, David. Hi, everybody. I'm Michael Harrington. I'm the Diversity, Equity and Inclusion Learning Lead for the Office for Health, Equity, and Inclusion. what a beautiful story from Clarissa, and it actually segues into what we want to do next. And that's the importance of talking about vulnerability. So before we can move forward in terms of our solutions, we have to acknowledge how we feel. So I thank Clarissa for her courage in sharing that story with us. This auditorium does not lend itself for the kind of activity that we want to do next, but we think it's important because we can't have the conversation that what everybody would have the opportunity to speak in such a short period of time with so many people. So I'd like to ask you to do something, and that is with the people around you, and maybe if you've already told them how you feel about what occurred, find somebody else near you that you haven't talked to yet. But before we go into connection, I'd like you to have a conversation with 2 or 3 people around you about first, how did you feel when you heard about the incident? Okay, and then we'll move forward after that. So let's take about a minute apiece with somebody around near you and talk about how you felt when you first heard about the incident, and then we're going to move forward from there. So please take the time to do that now. People have a chance. Like yesterday, it was too big.
Good.
Yeah, okay.
Good.
Thanks. Hi, Rob. How are you, sir?
Do you want to say anything? I'm not pressuring you. It's up to you.
Well, I'm the one who said it.
But it's okay. You are happy after this to open it up to you for just for a couple minutes. Thank you.
And the energy just goes shoot. Because in some of these, they don't have a chance. When you get to the Q&A part, I'm not going to have... Okay. Okay. Some people are stopping.
someone that they can hear your small conversations.
Okay. 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 Thank you for doing that. So I don't know about you, but down here we could really feel the energy as soon as we asked the question. The energy in the room just went like that. There's a lot of energy there. So one thing that we'd like to say, a lot of the answers for this is in the conversations. We're here. Thursday, we're having diversity conversations, right? And actually, that is so appropriate because really the answers and the healing is in the conversation. So one of the things that we'd like to ask you to do with the people that you work with, you know how when you go up to somebody and you say, "How are you?" Instead of saying just "How are you?" look them right in the eye. Maybe give them the attending nonverbal and then say to them, "No, really, how are you?" And put yourself in your best listening position to have the conversation. Because like I said, you could feel the energy in just beginning to talk about this. We all need to have conversation. What else can we do? Well, really it's around connection. So I'm going to share a story that I heard this morning, and I hope it's okay. I've asked my colleague if I could, and she said it's okay. So one of my colleagues, Patty Andreski, talked about her experience these past couple days, and she said when she was leaving yesterday for work, she feels really compelled to do something. Now, what can she do? And what Patty said is she made it a point to every person that she came across as she was walking through the hospital on her way out was to make eye contact with them and have some sense of connection or conversation, and how that felt like the right thing to do. So it sounds like a small thing, but really it's a way of being in terms of moving forward. That whole idea about connection and us moving forward together. So I want to put a plug in terms of conversation. You're going to hear about some opportunities. We're going to be posting opportunities to have conversation. There's one today at 3 o'clock. There's a group of us that have formed a spirituality affinity group. We're going to be in C109 in the Med Inn from 3 to 4 o'clock. And if you can't come today, look for other times. We meet monthly. But there's going to be other conversations. And I really encourage you to have a conversation because the vulnerability is really important to experience before we move forward. We feel compelled at times to move to solution when something like this happens. What are the steps? 1, 2, 3. How are we going to solve this? But in order to really have the perspective, we have to remember how we felt. We have to embrace that vulnerability and not forget what happened. So I encourage you to embrace the vulnerability. I encourage you to have the conversation. And we're going to move forward now with some question and answers. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. Before we move on to Q&A from you and comments and concerns, we have the pleasure of having the Chief Diversity Officer, Rob Sellers of the University of Michigan, and I want to invite him up to say a few words.
It's odd. I was just here Thursday with a set of conversations about where we are with regards to DEI. And in one of that conversations I had mentioned, no matter how good we are and where we get to as an institution, there's no way that we can stop assholes. The plan is not asshole-proof. So I believe deeply in what we're doing. I believe deeply in taking this as an opportunity for us to get better as a community, to care better as a community for each and every one of us. I know we've talked about where our emotions are. I'll just tell you where mine is. It's not sadness, it's anger. It is deep anger. This cannot be tolerated. I doubt very seriously if the people that did this are actually in this room, but in case they are, or someone happens to know them, please know that we as an institution are looking for you. And we will utilize all of our resources that we can to find you. Because that was not just a crime against the team, it was a crime against our entire community. That type of behavior cannot be tolerated and is not tolerated. So if anyone knows, or if that person is here, I hope you're sweating. I really, really do. At the same point in time, in the midst of this anger, as I stand here and look up and see all of you here, there's a small part of my heart that is full. I don't know, I would like to believe, but I don't know that we would all be here 3 or 4 years ago. I hope that we utilize this event as a way of saying no more as a community. We are coming together. We're going to live the principles of diversity, equity, and inclusion. Not because it's a slogan, not even because it's been endorsed or promoted on high, not even because of the benefits that we all gain as an institution of higher education. But in this day, at this moment, it's because it is the morally right thing to do. So, what I know about with regards to anger, sadness, and pain, what my history, my tradition, my family has taught me about that is understand it, embrace it, don't run from it, but also utilize this to make this place better. And not just better for each of us, but more importantly, better for those who come behind us. So as we come together and we talk and we emote and we share, please don't stop there. Do not stop there. Again, my history teaches me that in the face of the greatest evils and the greatest darkness, that hope shines bright. And it's not just hope, it's the determination to make a change in the face of that darkness. So I'm just here today to pledge to you that I'm going to work even harder, push even harder to try to make this university a better place. To try to make this health system a better place. And a better place for everyone. And I just ask, in the midst of coming together as a community and dealing with our own anger, pain, other feelings, that at the end of that you're willing to make a similar kind of pledge. Thank you.
Thank you, Rob Sellers. We all need to be more vigilant, and this is a group effort, diversity, equity, and inclusion. It's not just Rob's job or my job, but it's all of our jobs to make this a better place to work. So we have a few more minutes to hear words from you all. There are microphones. One's over here with Rue, one's over there with Patty. Please use the microphone so people here and who may be looking at this online can hear the conversation. There's one over here in the center. Two of them in the center. Dr. Chapman.
Hi. So thank you all for organizing this. A few years ago now, when a white supremacist walked into that church in Charleston and murdered black people, we had a vigil in the same room, and you invited me to give my reflection. And when I walked in here, I was really shocked to see the turnout in this room because it's substantially larger than it was at that time. And so I really don't know whether you just chose a better time or whether we're in a different time. And I really do hope that it's the latter. When I got that email, I didn't even, from Dr. Runge, I really didn't even respond. You know, they say that racism is a distraction, and I've experienced, so much racism and sexism in my life, right? And you have to, get up and keep moving. There were so many times, each time a black person was murdered by the police when I was a resident, I remember how hard it was to come into work, but I knew that, I needed to do it and keep on moving, and I came to work and everyone acted like nothing happened and kept on moving. But this time, even though I breezed past the email, one of my colleagues who was in my master's class with me sent me an email and told me she wasn't sure if she should do that, but thought I might be, experiencing some pain. And so we had a nice dialogue this weekend over email. And so I think for me, that's kind of, been my big takeaway. I remember, a few months ago when the hate crime happened in Pittsburgh, in the synagogue where my dad is from, and his primary care physician is Jewish, and I, just sent him an email to let him know that I was thinking about him. And I think that that's one thing that we can all do for each other, so that, we have to come to our jobs and keep moving, and we cannot, so that we don't feel alone and we know there's people who support us. So
thank you. Can you tell us your name as well?
Hi, my name is Linda Hart, and I just wanted to say I am encouraged that the words that I'm hearing is that it's going to be taken more seriously. When complaints come, they'll be investigated differently. I've been at the institution at the University of Michigan almost 15 years, and I share with you that you've seen it in all facets. As a woman, I like to say thick woman, as a black woman, these things they're real. And so my thing is, it's uncomfortable. I think when I have spoken to someone of authority in the past, through different processes that are available to the employees to say, this is real, it's not my imagination. And at the time, I think we are in a new time when people, and I thank the president of the university for pushing DE&I, but at the time, it was more an uncomfortable discussion and more of, we can't properly investigate that. That's hard to, to prove. I don't feel like I have to prove anything. I think that my feelings matter. Yes. I think that when I have, brothers and sisters of color who say to me or share their experiences and say that, this happened, I shouldn't be the only person available for them to speak to. They should feel free to talk, and many do. I don't want to get too, personal with it. I think many people also have outlets that they can talk to other people, but it is a sad state when you feel as if you can only speak to another black person or a person of color about the situation. So I hope that this is an opportunity for people to just listen and to know that it's real. It's not my imagination. It's not your imagination. It's not people just being too emotional over it, even though it makes you emotional to have to speak about something like this. It's frustrating. And I was angry. I was off 2 days when this happened. And I came back and I became instantly angry when I saw the emails, because in conversations people tried to say, well, it'll probably be found to be a prank. I don't care if it's a prank. It's hurtful. Mm-hmm. It's hurtful, and it's a despicable act. So I am encouraged to hear that people will take it more seriously. I hope that other people, and it's proven by the microcosm of the campus that we have here today, people are listening. They want to know what they can do. Just listen. Sometimes just listen. And you don't have to say anything. Just listen. And know that people are experiencing this. Racism looks different now than it did once upon a time. It looks different than it did in the 60s, where it was blatant. Now it looks professional. And we need to consider that.
Thank you. We have time for one more comment. And then it'll be 12:30.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Michael Williams, and I work in parking and transportation. And a lot of people that we see, almost at least 80% that come in the hospital, we see them when they come out. So we always have to, they don't always come out feeling good. Of course, we know that we're at a hospital, but we always try as parking attendants to keep that compassion in our hearts and our minds, to remember that we don't know what they've been told when they're leaving the hospital. But I'd just like to say today that I would ask everyone under the sound of my voice that we pray for the person who did this. They may not know the harm and the pain and the hurt that we're all feeling that's under this, that's in the auditorium here today, but we can pray for them, that we like the brother said, we're gonna find them. But what's even better, we would ask that he turn himself or herself in, and get the help that they need. And when you had the exercise, I'm going to sit down in a sec, but when you had the exercise to speak to someone around you, I talked to this beautiful lady named Patty sitting next to me. And as we sat here and we talked, tears came down my eyes because she asked me how did I feel about that. And I told her first I felt anger, and then I felt pain from stories that my grandfather and my grandmother and them told me on what that lynching rope meant to us as an African-American family. So I'll just ask that we put God first and that we pray for the person who did this. Thank you.
So we have a lot of work to do, and this is actually not the last conversation. A lot of groups, OHEI, spiritual care, and security have put together more drop-in times for conversations. You heard about the spirituality group at 3 o'clock today. Our first Fridays from OHEI will be the first Friday of July at noon in room A in the cafeteria. OHEI will also have drop-in times once a week. We also have other resource groups, the LGBTQ and disability groups. We're thinking about having a short rounds about this as well to have a broader conversation. Dr. Manglukar, the Dean of Medical Student Education, is having his open forum today at 5 for students, and Dr. Okunami from OHEI is meeting with students right after this. Security is having functions, open houses on Friday, June 28th from 11:30 to 12:30, and Tuesday, July 2nd at 10:30, and Wednesday, July 3rd at 11. All of them are in dining rooms A and B. We will send out a mass communication about this, but I just want to let you know that this is not the last conversation. There are many other venues for this, and we hope that you have these conversations in your own units. I'm going to have 2 more quick speakers. We're going to have Phyllis Blackman, the Administrative Director of Office for Health, Equity, and Inclusion, and then we're going to have Reverend Al Daniel, one of our staff chaplains, close us out.
Thank you, David, and thank you all for coming under these circumstances. As David said, I'm Phyllis Blackman, and I'm a 35-year employee at the University of Michigan. Over the years, I have experienced my own acts of discrimination and microaggressions against me, but none of which what we are experiencing now. I was angry. I was sad and disappointed. And I felt that all the work that we have been doing as it relates to diversity, equity, and inclusion has been set back. But you know, I didn't stay there. I didn't stay in that mindset, and I am now more determined than ever to do what is right. I will take what someone meant for evil and turn it into good. I will take this negative energy and turn it into a positive energy. It has been said, evil will not win. It will not win. So, sympathy, empathy, and compassion will guide my heart and my footsteps as we work together to pursue oneness. I encourage you to get on board with me. Thank you.
Reverend, thank you, Phyllis. And Reverend Al Daniel will close us out. Thank you.
Hello. I'm from the South, Mobile, Alabama. This is a matter of life and death, and I'm glad to see the support that you're giving to our community. We need to hear your voice, and we are ready to listen. Fulfill my joy by being like-minded, having the same love, being of one accord, of one mind. Let nothing be done through selfish ambition or conceit, but in lowliness of mind. Let each esteem others better than themselves. Let each of you look out not only for your own interests, but also for the interests of others. Bow with me in prayer. Almighty God, we know that you see all, we know that you know all, we know that you hear all. You know who is guilty, and you know who is innocent. But most of all, Father, help us to forgive and to love one another and get beyond our vulnerabilities. Tell our stories and let us be able to listen. Let us all say amen.
Thank you, Reverend. That concludes our program for today, but we will continue to have conversations. You can reach out to any of us at any time. Thank you.